Good morning. Hopefully today can be a better day. It's Tuesday, which means it's AA day. Today is going to be a hard one for me. Please be kind to one another. Don't judge each other. And never miss the chance to tell someone you love them. Please don't harass each other. Just because someone is in the chat doesn't mean that they are the alcoholic or recovering alcoholic. Just so normal. Be kind to each other. I'm going to say the serenity prayer and start the meeting, and then I will talk about what today is for me. I'm Sandra. I'm an alcoholic. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The contents are in the front of the 12 steps and 12 traditions. If you don't have the book, I'm going to read this. I'm going to say the steps and then move on. I see you there, Tony. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. I'm breathing. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
No. Move. Move.
Today's meeting is dedicated to my second sponsor. I found out yesterday that. Come on now!
No.
I found out that my second sponsor tried to fix my Facebook setup on my phone. The dog won't cooperate, of course. I found out yesterday that my second sponsor passed away on December 5th. She was more than just a sponsor. She was my sponsor, my friend, like one of my parents. She was there for me through the hard parts of many of my bad days. So many of my bad days. I didn't have to tell her what was wrong. She could tell that something was wrong without even having to say something a certain way. She always just came out and asked me, "What's wrong?" And for that, today is for her. I wish I had known right after so I could have made some sort of arrangements. But like I said, make sure you tell people that you love them because the next day they might not be here. They lost nearly all. The 15th story is this group tell of alcoholism at its. Come on, Copper, move, get down. No, get down. Sorry about that. The 15th story is this group tell of alcoholism at its miserable worst. Many tried everything: hospitals, special treatments, sanitariums, asylums, and jails. Nothing worked. Loneliness, great physical and mental agony. These were the common lots. Most had taken shattering losses on nearly every front of life. Some went on trying to live with alcohol, others wanted to die. Alcoholism had respected nobody. Neither rich nor poor, learned nor unlettered, all found themselves headed for the same destruction, and it seemed they could do nothing whatever to stop it. Now sober for years, they tell us how they got well. They proved to almost anyone's satisfaction that it's never too late to try Alcoholics Anonymous. I put in the description the chapter we're reading, the story we're reading, the title of the name in the descriptions on my channel for this video, and I put in the page number as well. My bottle, my resentment, and me. From childhood trauma to Skid Row drunk to hobo finally found a higher power, bringing sobriety and a long lost family. When I rode into a small mountain town in an empty freight car, my matted beard and filthy hair would have reached nearly to my belt if I'd had a belt. I wore a lice-infested grimy Mexican poncho over a reeking pajama top, and a ragged pair of jeans stuffed into cowboy boots with no heels. I carried a knife in one boot and a .38 revolver in the other. For 6 years, I'd been fighting for survival on Skid Row and riding across the country in freights. I hadn't eaten in a long time, so was half starved and down to 130 pounds. I was mean and I was drunk, but I'm ahead of myself. I believe my alcoholism really began when I was 11 years old, and my mother was brutally off. Until then, my life had been much the same as any of the other boys who lived in a small town during that period. One night, my mother failed to return home from her job at a car manufacturing plant. The next morning, there was still no sign of her, or any clue to why she had disappeared. With great apprehension, the police were called. Since I was a mama's boy, this was especially traumatic for me. And to make matters worse, unbelievably worse, a few days later the police came and arrested my father. They had found my mom's in a field outside of town and wanted to question him. In that instant, the family life I knew was destroyed. My father was soon returned because the police had found a pair of glasses that did not belong to him of the scene. This clue led to the man who had brutally killed my mother. At school, the gossip was vicious. At home, there was chaos, and no one would tell me what was happening. So I withdrew and began to block out the reality around me. If I could pretend it didn't exist, it might go away. I became extremely lonely and defiant. The confusion, pain, and grief had begun to subside when an article appeared in a mystery magazine about my family's misfortune. The children at school started to gossip and scrutiny all over again. I retreated further. and became angrier and more withdrawn. It was easier that way because people would leave me alone if I acted disturbed even before they tried to inquire. Because my father was unable to care for all nine of us, the family had to be split up. About a year later, he remarried, and my oldest brother offered to take me in. He and his new wife tried to help me, but I was just so defensive, there was little they or anyone else could do. Finally, I took a job after school sorting soda bottles in a grocery store, where I found I could forget if I worked hard enough. In addition, it was a good place to steal beer and be a big guy with the other kids in school. That's the way my drinking began, as a way to make the pain go away. After several years of semi delinquent adolescence, I was old enough to join the Marines. Leaving behind the origin of my bitterness, I thought my life would be better and the drinking not so bad. However, during boot camp, I realized that this was not the answer. The discipline, the authority, the tight schedule went against my very nature. But it was a 2 year stint, so there had to be a way to function in spite of the anger and not hatred, and now hatred, that seethed through me. Every night found me at a bar drinking until they threw me out. That got me through the week. On weekends, we went to club nearby. This place was managed by people who drank as much as or more than I did. I became a constant customer. Arguments and fights were a regular occurrence. I drink my soda. I managed to complete the 2 years, was given an honorable discharge, and was sent on my way. Leaving the Marine base behind and feeling homesick for my old envi- environs,
Inward.
environs, I hitchhiked back to my old hometown and returned to my brother's home. I soon found work as a painter for a construction company in town. By now, drinking had become a constant part of my life. Though some friends through some friends I met a woman I really cared for, and soon we were married. A year later, our daughter was born, and eventually 2 boys. Oh, how I loved my brood. This nice little family should have settled me down, but instead my drinking progressed. It finally reached the point where I was intolerable to life or live with, and my wife filed for divorce. I just went berserk, and the sheriff ordered me to leave town. I knew if I stayed, my anger at my wife for taking those children away from me would get me into more trouble than even I could handle. So once again, I set off. I left with my hatred, resentment, and the clothes on my back, this time for good. In the largest city close by, I could be found dead broke, drinking myself into oblivion on Skid Row. At first, a day labor job provided me for rent and food, but before long, all the money had to go for booze. I found a mission where someone in need could sleep and eat free. But the bugs were so bad, the food is terrible, and people were such thieves. I decided that it was easier to just sleep outside and that I really didn't need to eat so often. So I found that hobo jungles, parked cars, and abandoned houses made nice places for my bottle, my resentment, and me. No one dared to bother me. I was utterly bewildered at where life had taken me. This was really long. Other hobos I met taught me the safest way to hop on a moving freight train and how to protect myself. They told me who were the easiest people to get a handout from and how to scam them. My biggest problem at that time was to find a way to get enough to drink to keep the reality of my life at bay. I lost my place again. Okay. Other hobos I met taught me the safest way to hop on a moving freight train and how to protect myself. They told me where the easiest people to get a handout from. Okay, blah blah blah. I already read that part. Okay, there it is. I was consumed by hate. For the next 6 years, I went from Skid Row to Skid Row. One boxcar headed in any direction was as good as another. I had no place to go. One thing about it, I never got lost because I never cared where I was. I crossed the United States 3 times with no plan, no reason, no eating half the time. I hung out with other misfits like myself. Someone would say they were hiring in Florida or New York or Wyoming, and off we'd go. But by the time we would finally get there, they would say they were not hiring anymore. That was all right because we didn't want to work anyway. One scorching day when I was in a desert town drinking, something unusual happened. I felt as though I had reached a point where I couldn't go on. To get away from everyone, I managed to find some booze and started walking out into the desert, thinking, I'll just go until I die. Soon, so drunk I couldn't walk another step. I fell to the ground and moaned, Oh God, please help me. I must have passed out because hours later I came to and found my way back to town. At the time, I had no idea what made me change my mind about death. Today, I know it was that my higher power took over my life. By this time, I was so wild eyed and filthy, people would shy away from me. I hated the look of fear on their faces when they saw me. They looked at me as if I were not human, and maybe I wasn't. In one large city I took to sleeping on the grates with a piece of plastic over me so I wouldn't breathe. One night I was found a clothing drop box I could get into. It made a nice warm place to sleep, and I could get new clothes. In the morning, in the middle of the night, someone threw in more clothes. I opened the cop, looked out, and shouted, "Thanks." That woman threw up her hands and ran away screaming. Lordy, lordy. She jumped into her car and screeched off. I was just about as sad a figure of a man as is possible when I jumped off that freight. I found an empty refrigerator car sitting on a siding and took up residence in it. I hate that. Here you could get welfare very easily, so off I went to apply. Now I could eat. It was my third time in this town, so I headed straight for my favorite bar. Here I met a barmaid who drank like a fish and was as mean a woman as I had ever seen. But she had a place to live, so I moved in, and thus began the romance of a lifetime. I finally had a roof over my head, sheets and food. All we did was drink and fight, but she worked at the bar, so it kept us going. With just enough cash for booze, we drank continuously for several months. Then, on my way to find a drink, I ran into one of my old hobo buddies, an older man. I remembered him as an uh, excessive drinker, an alcoholic. And there he was walking toward me down the street in a white shirt, tie, and suit, looking marvelous, with a big smile on his face. He told me he'd quit drinking, and how he'd managed to do it, and how much better he felt. My first thought was, if he can do that, I can do that, and much better, because I'm only 33. He took me down to this club where there were some other recovered alcoholics. I drank coffee while they all told me how they had changed. It looked like they might have something here. If they could do this, maybe, just maybe I could too. Their enthusiasm was catching. I began to feel excitement inside, but had no idea why. I rushed off to tell my new girlfriend about what had happened and how great it would be if we quit drinking. You're nuts, she yelled at me. You can just drag your rear back to your refrigerator car. I've got parties to go to. Although I seemed unable to transmit my excitement, I told her more. The next day, we both quit drinking. There was no word to explain why it happened or how it happened. It just did. It was a miracle. Every day we were able to stay sober was another gift from a higher power. I had given up on many long years before. The next year, we took a job managing a camp outside of town where drunks were sent to get dried out and sobered up. It was our responsibility to see that they had food and stayed out of trouble. Both tasks were almost impossible at times, but we kept trying. With some support from old timers in AA, we lasted a year. This was a volunteer job and we had little money for ourselves. When the year was up, I went over the list of drunks who had been through the place. 178 in all. I exclaimed to my partner, not a single one of them is sober today. Yeah, she replied, but you and I are. And so, on that happy note, we were then married. My sponsor told me if I wanted to form a relationship with my higher power, it would be necessary for me to change. At a meeting one night, a member said, "It's not how much you drink, it's what drinking does to you." That statement changed my whole attitude, of course. I had to surrender and accept I was an alcoholic. I had a hand to, I had a hard time giving up the anger at my ex-wife for taking my kids, at the man who offed my mother, and at my father for what I felt was deserting me. But these resentments eased with time as I began to comprehend my own defects of character. I became acquainted with some monks in a nearby monastery who listened to my story with some amazement and were able to help me understand myself. At the same time, my sponsor and other old timers who had taken us under their wings loved us back to join society. Gradually, the ice that was my heart melted and I changed as my relationship with my higher power grew. Life began to take on a whole new meaning. I made what amends were possible, but knew I would have to return to my childhood home to clear up that part of my past.
You can stop if you want to. You don't have to keep going.
I'll start after this paragraph. But we were busy with our own paint contracting company or print. No, it is paint company now. And as the years passed by, the opportunity to go back home just did not come. So, with that right there, I'm gonna stop. Um, it's been a rough day. Yesterday was a rough day for me, and thank you. So I didn't get to that point where I was all rags and homeless and all of that. But no matter how far you go in your alcoholism, you're still gonna hit bottom. It's just some of us have a higher bottom than the others, and it doesn't make us any different from them. We are still an alcoholic, Um, After all, I'm not any better than any of you, and the same for you to me. And I have a higher power, and that's where she is. She is just my higher power. She gave me my voice back. She helped me learn to use my voice, and that's what she was in my life for. And I thank her for that. Thank her for that so many times, so many times. And she's the reason, another reason I started my AA meetings here on my channel, because she wanted me to use my voice. Uh, on my Facebook page, I found our last conversation, and she was telling me how much I helped her. Heartwarming to know how much you helped someone. Even though I didn't know until now that she passed on December 5th, it still hurts because I know she helped me and I know I helped her. And she is where she's supposed to be now. And I did always tell her I loved her. And she knew I did. So that's why this meeting is for her. I want to thank her for giving me more reason to fight and stay sober and not give in to the temptation ever. Uh, my 10th year is working right now, working my steps every day, not going back out to drink, which I could have done very easily yesterday, but regardless if you have money, you can go and find the alcohol, it's right there. And I don't have to give in to that old me because at this point I would have already drank. It's not an option for me because I'm not willing to go back to who I was before because that would disappoint me so much. Me, myself, because this is myself doing my steps, myself care for myself and keep going forward and don't look back. I mean, I don't want to go back to that other me. I didn't function. I didn't do anything. I didn't care. I did not care about anything when I was drunk. I didn't care. I didn't care what people said about me. I didn't care about caring about anybody else. All I cared about was getting my next drink. Simple as that, you know? And I don't have to worry about that because that's not a part of my life now. This AA is my life. And I learned through going to meetings and everything that you have to want it for yourself to make it work. You have to want to do the work to make it work. You can't do it unless you know what you're doing, and definitely you can't do it when you're drunk. So getting up and drinking is not an option. Um, I did my first set of, I quit for a year and then I came back and went back to drinking. You know, that was before AA, and I'm thankful and grateful for the AA fellowship, for my groups, for everyone here on my platforms that support me. And encouraged me to keep going, that this is helping someone. And knowing from the last correspondence I had with my second sponsor made me know that for sure I am helping everyone. In a way, I'm helping everyone. And whether it sticks for them on helping this way, that's not on me. That's on them. I can't force them to do anything. I can only control me and me right here in this moment. I can't control what my kids doing. I can't control what my family's doing. I can't control what my friends are doing. Just me and my own hula hoop right here. And so I do that quite often. It I do stay by myself quite a lot, but I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I need to just breathe. Just breathe. Don't do anything else. Just breathe. Don't freak out about that. Just breathe. Say your prayers. Well, believe me, I do a lot of it. But it's so that way I don't become the angry me. I don't become the old me, and I don't want to be that. I want to be me here, helping someone. And I give AA a lot of credit because I wouldn't be sober. I wouldn't be sober if it wasn't for them and my hard work and the fellowship helping me to stay sober and my family rooting me on. And my first sponsor, all I have to do is pick up the phone, which is why I waited to call to check on my second sponsor because she's an elderly lady, and I kind of had a feeling, she hadn't answered or responded to me. So I knew that something was wrong. I knew, and I just put it off, and I didn't call. Don't put it off, you guys. Just don't put it off. Anyway, I'm going to say the Trinity prayer for Facebook side. I will put in the description the daily reflection for today, and I'm going to come over here to YouTube and read it to you guys. So I love you, Facebook, and let's go ahead and say the prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, and forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. If you don't have a Daily Reflections app, please download one. Any of them are good. January 2nd, 2024. Birth the Foundation. Is sobriety all that we can expect of a spiritual awakening? No, sobriety is only a bare beginning. And that's as Bill sees it, page 8. I believe that is, yeah, it is. It's in the big book. Practicing the AA program is like building a house. First, I had to pour a big, thick concrete slab on which to erect the house. That to me was the equivalent of stopping drinking, but it's pretty uncomfortable living on a concrete slab, unprotected and exposed to the heat, cold, wind, and rain. So I built a room on a slab by starting to practice the program. The first room was rickety because it wasn't used to the work. But as time passed, as I practiced the program, I learned to build better rooms. The more I practiced and the more I built, the more comfortable and happy was the home I now have to live in. All right, everybody. I love you guys, and I'll see you maybe tomorrow. I don't know if I'm gonna do a live tomorrow. So I love you guys. Have a good day.